Did you guys see that one senator from West Virginia? It's Barrasso. What's his name? Barrasso? John Barrasso?
He's
Bassano?
from, I want to say Wyoming.
Wyoming. Yeah, he's from Wyoming. Yeah. So he went out there. He went out there and he said the whole thing about, well, you know, who's seen this 2,500 page what do you call it, bill, who's taking a look at this, et cetera. It's how many people you think have read it, and they expect us to, John Barrasso.
Yeah.
And so, but here's the thing, what we did. I said, okay, I want to know the bill. I want to read the bill. I want to go through it. Mm-hmm. Kai, how many hours did we spend looking at the bill, and did you find anything? Could we find the bill anywhere?
At least a good hour, and we couldn't find it anywhere. We were looking at literally the first 2-3 pages on Google trying to find Congress's website, the government's website, everywhere.
It's probably on the dark web in China.
So there is some websites that are talking about it. Let's go to page 8, guys. There's some websites that are talking about it, and some people who are sharing some points on what's in it. This is one of them. And I'm going to cover, Kai, if you want to pull up the article that even the audience can see, this is from what? This is Fox Business. Go to page 8. If you can find that article, what's in it? One of the ones that's in it is really concerning on page 168 of the bill. 168 of the bill, which we don't have access to the bill, but 168 of the bill, it covers a fine. I don't know if you guys have seen that $700,000 fine, but let me get right into it. So $3.5 trillion spending package includes big money for tree equity, bias training, and more. Apparently, one of the things on page 168 of the bill is if an employer has an employee that's unvaccinated, it's $700,000 fine per employee that's unvaccinated. Let me say that one more time, okay? If an employee is unvaccinated, it's $700,000 fine per employee that's unvaccinated. How many companies can handle that? I don't know how many companies can handle that. And this is all over the place, about the $700,000. So you got nearly $79 billion bill for the IRS. Folks, out of the $3.5 trillion, $80 billion of it is purely for IRS, $12 billion for electric cars, $3 billion for tree equity, $1 billion to turn government into facilities into high-performance green buildings, and new funding for gender identity issues and bias training. Amongst the most contentious provisions, the bill gives a substantial funding boost to Internal Revenue Service that stands, again, $80 billion over the next 10 years. So out of the $3.5 trillion, the biggest money is going to the IRS. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, folks, we should vote for this. This is absolutely fascinating to have more IRS agents going and trying to find that $600 that they're talking about.
Oh my gosh.
The money would help the IRS strengthen tax enforcement activities. What a friendly thing to say. The IRS strengthen tax enforcement activities, something we all love and support, expand audits and modernize its technology. An additional $410 million would go to IRS oversight. Democrats are also putting equity at the center of the bill. The Agriculture Committee has earmarked $3 billion for a tree planting program with a priority for projects that increase tree equity. The legislation dishes out another $4 billion for neighborhood access and equity grants. Meanwhile, its electric vehicle charging equity program comes with a $1 billion price tag. Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia, Kristen Sinema from Arizona, both Democrats, have been the most vocal in their opposition, and even they have been negotiating separately. Manchin told Politico on Thursday, what's the need? There is no timeline. I want to understand it. While Representative for Sinema told the same outlet, Kristen recognizes there's a timeline, there's got to be a process, but said she was consulting with colleagues about the key provisions, the cost of the bill. The cost of the bill originally was $3.5 trillion, but the nonpartisan committee of a responsible federal budget wrote in July that the true cost would be end up being around $5.5 trillion. The New York Times responded Monday morning that the current bill is likely to cost well over $3.5 trillion. Again, that's not New York Post. That's New York Times saying it's going to be well over $3.5 trillion. And last but not least, figuring out the true cost could take time. The bill, formerly known as the Build Back Better Act, weighs in 2,465 pages, 444,000 words. That is 3 times the size of Atlas Shrugg's book, which is a long book. And each page is $1.4 billion.
Gosh.
Okay, is what you're looking at. So
that's why Manchin says we need to take a pause. We need to pause. Tom brought up a great point. I mean, think about the worst legislation that's ever been done in this country. It's legislation that wasn't read. And that's, I mean, right, Tom?
Do you remember the ACA?
Yeah, of course.
Kai, see if you can find the clip from Nancy Pelosi when she got cornered, said, what's in it? We'll find out what's in it when it's passed.
Yeah,
He
I
says,
remember
have you
that.
read it?
We
No.
talked
Why
about
is that even
yesterday.
acceptable? Like, why, whether you're Republican or Democrat, why is it
It's
even
not.
acceptable
No,
to
I'm just
say,
saying this is
let's
the-
just look at this when we're already past the bill? Why does that make
No,
any
I mean,
sense?
They need to,
on
they
either
need
side
to
of the
change.
aisle?
They need to change the title.
But by the way,
She
public
pointed out
service.
yesterday that it's a slush fund. They're passing dollars, not bills. They're passing dollars,
are.
not bills.
How much of this $3.5 trillion is going to the people?
That's
How much? So forget about Republican, Democrat. How much of this money is going to the people stimulus?
from what I have seen.
Zero.
No.
As far as stimulus
Yeah.
goes?
No. They
Well, not
are
cash.
they are extending the child tax credit,
Yeah.
which is being paid in cash right now.
Okay, but
Yeah,
how
but
many of
that's
those?
not. That's not. You're talking about child tax credit. These
Yes.
are two different
All
things I'm
sa-
talking
but-
about.
Well, that's a major part
even
of
that
this,
is
apparently.
controversial.
But that's not. Okay, so what percentage of the $3.5 trillion is going to go to the people?
I don't know, but here, can I just give you
Yeah,
what the top
sure.
5 things? Like, I know we talked about IRS,
80 billion.
80 billion, 12 billion for electric cars, 3 billion for tree equity, whatever that is, 1 billion for gender. Okay, those are minor, lines on the budget. The big 5, apparently, of this $3.5 trillion spending plan is climate change. You talked about the child tax credit, which apparently is a big deal if you got kids. Universal pre-K, right now that doesn't exist in the country. Paid family leave, and expanding Medicare to cover, I guess, dental, vision, and other things. So those are the big 5 things within this bill. Now, within each of those categories, I'm sure there's, like you said, slush funds, and why won't they show what the categories are? But those are the big 5 categories.
And it's spread out over 10 years? I mean, please.
So here's the challenge.
He's asking the right question.
Yeah. Here's a challenge I got. My challenge is the following. If I'm correct me on this one, but I read in like handful of different places, this is the only one that a bill like this passed and there's no hearing. So they're not having a hearing, meaning they're not willing to have a hearing to answer what's in it. So you know how typically there's a hearing, then they'll say, why this and why that and why this? They don't want to do a hearing. So there is nobody from the opposing side or Manchin or Kristen, they cannot ask, why are we spending this much money in this? That's a problem
and
because...
that's why Manchin has said.
What happened, Kai? Kai found something? You found the bill?
I think Tyler found the bill. Yeah.
Can you go to page 168 of the bill? Go to page 168. I want to verify this because this doesn't make any sense to me. So, in addition to amounts of otherwise available, any of the money in the Treasury, in other words, appropriated, 300 million.
There it is, line 15, Pat.
Line 15. Okay. Occupational Safety Health Act of 1970, Occupational Care Litigation. So I'm trying to see where it says the vaccine, the Employment Commission. So you got Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970, Section 17 of the Occupational Safety Health.
Yeah, because OSHA is going to
amended.
be their cop.
In subsection 1A, a striking $70,000 and inserting $700,000.
There's the increased fine. Now we got to find just
By striking, so they're increasing it from 70 to 700. By striking 50 and inserting 50,000, 10 times the fine.
Just 10 times.
Oh my gosh. By striking 7,000 and inserting $70,000.
But guys, this is how bad legislation is passed because they're desperately
little
looking. And who wants to bring back the SALT deduction? For
Right.
property taxes, state. I mean, the Democrats, they actually want to put. There are some Democrats who are opposing this bill if it does not get rid of the cap on property taxes.
and this is Biden. Remember being told, I'm sorry, you can't.
Kai, can you email it to me?
You can't do that with an executive order. You can't force vaccination with the executive order. Well, who could we do it? Oh, we'll get OSHA. We'll get one of our many cops in government and we'll throw it at OSHA so that OSHA goes out and does it.
But this $3.5 trillion spending bill isn't the only thing on the agenda right now. You were talking about the big 4 things that are on
There
the
are
plate right now.
4
I don't know
big things.
if you want to touch on that.
So, Republicans a few days ago, they said to Chuck Schumer, who's the Senate Majority Leader right now, Schumer kept trying to put the debt ceiling inside of the continuing resolution to keep the government open after midnight tonight, because midnight tonight is when the United States fiscal year ends.
Yeah.
And
That's something I learned, by the way, that the fiscal year of the United States ends
September the 30th.
September 30th, not at the end of the year.
Nope, it's not a calendar
Fiscal year.
It's fiscal year.
We learned something, everybody. Go ahead.
So, but after midnight, and the Republicans are going to vote for what's taken to the floor, but they said you got to take the debt ceiling out of it, or you're not going to get the votes. So Schumer had to pull back, and they've removed the debt ceiling, which takes us back to Patrick's birthday, October the 18th, X date. That's the date at which, I mean, if your family's got plans to go to Washington, D.C., you might want to take the Smithsonian off the list.
Yeah.
That's when federal agencies start to close.
Well, when did the government shut down
or just
last?
take external pictures.
Well, yes.
Like an NFT. When's the last time the government shut down?
Oh, gosh, was it 2000? Was it 18?
Wasn't it 18?
That
The
sounds
famous
right.
Trump, Pelosi, Schumer meeting?
No. 2019 is when the debt ceiling was suspended. July 31st, 2019. It was suspended for 2 years, meaning by July the 31st, 2021, they would have to raise it. But the reason that it was, and there was no controversy, there was Pelosi and Trump, you'd have thought that they were cousins, kissing cousins at that. It was so non-controversial because it lifted the cap past the election. So whoever got elected in 2020 would have unlimited spending power.
That was the debt ceiling.
Until July the 31st. Yes. And that was the reason that there was so little controversy. I think when Clinton was in office, I seem to remember federal workers.
No, there was something like 2-3 years ago where the government shut down for like 2 months, and you had federal workers going crazy. They couldn't pay their rent.
This
was recent.
Yes, this does happen from time to time. The reason it's different right now is because the Republicans are. This is a quote from Mitch McConnell. A reporter asked Mitch McConnell, "What did you learn from 2011?" which is when the U.S. sovereign debt rating was downgraded. He said, what I learned was even though I had pressure from within my party, so even though he was getting pressure from within the GOP to kill who'd been kidnapped, and that was the analogy that he used.
This was the Tea Party doing their thing at that point.
He said that the lesson that he learned is you don't do it, you collect the ransom.
What does that mean?
That means that you actually force negotiations to address entitlement spending so that the debt of the United States quits running up at a crazy rate. And that was why S&P downgraded the country. They were like, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? They're still not addressing long-term entitlement spending that the country cannot afford. And as long as you continue to ignore those elephants in the room, and in this $3.5 trillion thing, it wants to go the opposite direction. It wants to create social spending programs that never go away. You never create a government program that gets canceled. It doesn't work that way.
Danielle, they use the term entitlement like crazy. Entitlement. What's the biggest entitlement? Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security?
Yes, those three.
And then welfare?
Is that
part of it?
Unfunded entitlements?
Unfunded entitlements?
Unfunded. That's exactly right. That's exactly
Liabilities?
Right. So they're talking about what's there. Unfortunately, in 2013, for then Federal Reserve Chair Ben Bernanke, they had a blueprint drawn up. Well, gee, the Federal Reserve owns a whole bunch of U.S. Treasuries because it's been buying up U.S. Treasuries for all this time. Now it owns 25% of U.S. Treasuries. There is a blueprint to strategically default only on debt on the Fed's balance sheet. And it was written up for Ben Bernanke in 2013. I can guarantee you that the Fed hates the fact that this document is actually in the public purview, but there is a way, and Mitch McConnell knows it, there is a way for the United States to strategically default on the paper owned, on the bonds owned by the Federal Reserve. And man, Fitch and Moody's would be right behind them downgrading just like S&P did if they did it. It's the nuclear option, but it's a nuclear option that Mitch McConnell is very aware of.
You think he'll use it? You think he'll use that card?
I mean, well, look, the stock market's up. The economy has not fallen out of bed. Inflation's a real problem. And right now, as long as the economy doesn't fall out of bed, which threatens the midterms for all incumbents across both parties, I think Mitch is going to take this thing to the wire.
So if he takes it to the wire, let's just say he takes it to the wire and he uses that card, what happens to the economy? How ugly could it be?
It could be very ugly.
Ugly is 20% or 10%?
It could be. The United States defaulting on its debt. I mean, just say that. Repeat that. The United States of America, the risk-free asset for the free world, not paying its obligations, not making an interest payment. You hear about that, with third world countries. Argentina. How many times has Argentina defaulted on its debt? I mean,
Greece.
Count the way. Greece. Those are the kind of countries that you have conversations about debt default. So not the United States.
Across the aisle are the McConnells of the world and the Pelosi's of the world, the Schumers of the world, privately saying like, look, this isn't a good look for America to default on our debt. We got to figure this thing out. Are they having the public? They're going to talk. They're going to say one thing.
this is the thing, and this is the reason that Mitch McConnell gave Chuck Schumer the bird a few days ago. And this is what Mitch McConnell has been insisting. If you want to raise the debt ceiling using reconciliation, straight on party lines, go for it. They won't even need advertising agencies for the midterms. If the Republicans manage to flawlessly, easily, elegantly put $7 trillion on the Democrats.
See, that's what Schumer's not going to do.
That's what Schumer, and Schumer won't do it.
Got
That's
it.
why they will not raise the debt ceiling using reconciliation, because they'll all get voted out of office.
And he tried to slip it in there, and McConnell said, take that cheese off my hamburger. We're buying the burger, but take that cheese off there.
And that's why Schumer keeps saying this is disastrous. We cannot default on the debt. And McConnell keeps saying, then raise the debt limit along party lines. Own it.
Seems to be a simple provision, Chuck, and we're all sitting here in the chamber. Why don't you walk to the front, make a few preamble statements, and put it on the floor, baby?
I mean, in 2019, we raised the debt limit by like $2 trillion. This is like 3x that. And don't get me wrong, this is debt that was incurred during the Trump administration. This is the CARES Act. This is the trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that were legislated. It is money that has been spent, but the Republicans are saying to the Democrats, own it.
So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.